Hi, welcome to Open Door Yoga. My name is Michelle, and today we're going to go through 4 tips or strategies to consider when teaching a class to someone who has arthritis. The first tip has to do with back bends. Take it easy with back bends. That doesn't mean that someone with arthritis can't participate in yoga postures that involve significant back extension. We just have to be very direct and intentional with our cues. So let's take a moment to consider the spine. Our spine is comprised of several vertebrae and also several joints, which means there's a lot of opportunity to put too much pressure on some of those joints. So one rule of thumb is to keep a nice neutral neck with our head in line with our spine. Our cervical spine is one of those sections of our vertebrae that can really extend quite a bit, and so it's easy to go too hard too soon with someone who you're just getting to know with arthritis. Another thing to consider is that we tend to dump into parts of our spine that are more flexible than others. So for example, let's think about puppy pose. In puppy pose, if an individual has more flexibility in their lower back than their upper back, you're going to see that pretty excessive sway in their low back, which means they're putting a lot of pressure on the vertebrae in their lower spine and those joints. And they're also missing out on where we want them to feel the sensation in their upper back body, in their shoulders, in the backs of their arms. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're very directional with our cues. So we want to cue them to engage their core so that they can more evenly distribute their weight or their pressure into that back extension, and then also feel the sensation where we want them to feel it. Tip number 2 involves hip openers. If your student has arthritis in their hips, we want to be very cautious when it comes to hip openers. Those are those postures that involve a lot of external rotation in our hips. So common postures are pigeon. Even modifications of pigeon, like seated or supine figure 4, can put a lot of pressure on the outsides of your hips. One thing that we might not consider is a pose like easy seat. Sitting here on the mat with our legs crossed involves a lot of external rotation in our hips and can be very painful for someone with arthritis. So one option, if you are doing some postures where we're seated on the mat, especially during a warm-up for a yoga class, maybe have your student perform those postures seated in a chair. Another option is to play around with some supportive lifts. So you can use a folded blanket or maybe a cushion like a bolster and bring their hips up a little bit higher than their knees. This will allow them to relax a little bit more through the inner linings of their legs, especially if their lower back is tight, and maybe that can alleviate some of that pressure that they're feeling in their hips. Tip number 3 involves focusing on balancing the strength between opposing muscle groups. And so one of the unfortunate results of arthritis is that we may have instability in one or more of our joints. And so yoga is a wonderful strengthening program because we can strengthen all the muscles in our body, and our muscles is what helps to stabilize or support our joints. Now the problem comes in is if we are focused on strengthening one of the muscle groups that supports a joint and we're not giving cues to engage the others. Because if we're only focusing on one piece of the puzzle, we might actually be causing more instability. And so let's use high lunge or crescent lunge as an example. It's really easy to hold our body up and just focus on engaging our quadricep. And that quadricep is one of the muscles that supports our knee. Now in our yoga class, we also want to make sure that we're engaging our hamstring. So how can we cue our students to make sure that they're engaging both large groups of muscles? Well, one way we could do it is to have them think about sending energy forward through their front shin, and then also imagine pulling their front heel back towards the back wall. So that forward sending energy is going to keep them engaged in that quadricep, and then that pulling back is going to help them fire up their hamstring a little bit. So just make sure that when we're cueing yoga poses, we're helping our students understand how they can engage all of the muscles that help support their joints. tip number 4. If it hurts, stop. Now, I know this may seem very intuitive to you as a yoga teacher sitting here watching this video, but I can guarantee you it's not as intuitive for some of your students. That phrase, no pain, no gain, is really etched into the minds of a lot of people. And someone who may be referred to you by their primary care physician might not understand that pain is not a good thing. In their minds, pain may be their body's way of working through what they're experiencing so that they can yield positive results. So we just want to make sure that we're providing enough education so all of our students can be safe and feel the positive effects of yoga. Another thing to consider is that arthritis works a little bit differently. Most of us will be in a posture, may experience some discomfort, and know in that moment to choose a modification or variation that better fits our body. Someone with arthritis who is new to this posture may not feel that pain or that discomfort right away. They might feel it the next day or maybe even a couple days after your class. So make sure with these students you're starting very slowly so that you can make sure that they're going to go home and they're going to feel good and they're going to want to come back so that you can slowly build and make progress and they can enjoy yoga for the rest of their lives.